Every successful business operates on a highly specific combination of resources. Behind the hum of a perfectly tuned assembly line is a calculated assumption that the raw materials and inputs feeding it will remain affordable and constantly available. But the physical limits of our planet enforce a harsh reality. All resources are finite. The cost to acquire those limited resources dictates a firm's baseline ability to survive. Take a traditional agricultural operation. Success here was historically built on a predictable equation, utilizing massive expanses of low-cost land alongside abundant inputs like steady, natural rainfall. Then, an external crisis breaks that equation. A severe drought hits. The water required to keep those crops alive dries up, and the cost to secure the remaining supply spikes, forcing the farm to pay far more for less. This triggers immediate financial paralysis. In economics, we track a metric called marginal cost, the exact price a business pays to produce just one additional unit of their product. When a core resource becomes rare, that marginal cost shoots upward. The farm cannot simply absorb that massive expense indefinitely. If they try to eat the higher costs, they bleed cash. Over time, sustained economic losses lead to what economists call the black thundercloud of market exit. The business closes its doors and ceases to exist. A profitable, stable operation becomes a race against time. The owners face a brutal binary choice: figure out how to operate differently right now or die. The immediate aftermath of this shock is called the short run. During this period, a firm is trapped by its fixed capital. They have the machinery and facilities they already built, and they cannot replace these systems overnight. They might try to compensate by throwing more manual labor at the problem. But they quickly hit the law of diminishing marginal product. Without enough raw materials or equipment to go around, each new worker adds less and less value to the overall operation. This chart shows the exact effect of that law. Look at the right side. As you add more workers to a fixed amount of equipment, the extra output you get from each additional worker drops sharply. This graph illustrates the firm's only logical reaction to being trapped. We see the supply curve shifting backwards to the left. To avoid bleeding money on expensive inputs, the firm drastically cuts back on how much it produces. Cutting production means walking away from potential revenue and surrendering market share to competitors. It is a defensive retreat designed entirely to keep the firm solvent. But shrinking the business is only a financial tourniquet. It buys time, yet it fails to solve the underlying dependency on the resource that has become so costly. To actually survive, the firm must reach the long run. In economics, the long run is a planning horizon where every single factor of production becomes variable. The firm is no longer trapped by its old equipment and can rethink its entire operation from the ground up. They engage in input substitution. The company actively seeks out a different combination of labor and machinery to replace the expensive resource with something cheap and abundant. Think of a manufacturing plant where manual labor costs have risen too high. Instead of paying a massive premium for hundreds of workers, the firm installs heavy machinery, substituting human hands with capital-intensive equipment to maintain output. Looking at this chart of long-run average costs, we see the mathematical result of that pivot. By restructuring, the firm bypasses the scarcity bottleneck. Their cost per unit slides down the curve from point S to point L, restoring their profitability. True adaptation requires a company to change its internal structure. It survives by permanently severing its reliance on the exact resource that almost destroyed it. Zoom out from that single factory floor. Every competitor in the market faces the same narrowing margin and the same pressure to adapt. The companies that successfully engineer a pivot and substitute their inputs manage to stabilize. Together, they form a new, resilient baseline for the entire industry. The rigid companies face a much darker reality. If they are unable to cover their daily operating expenses or they are unable to pivot their technology, they are forced out of the market entirely. Over time, the successful adaptations of the surviving firms ripple outward. Supply adjusts to meet demand under these new constraints, and the entire market locks into a new equilibrium. Scarcity is a ruthless filter for the economy. It dictates how much society can produce and forces businesses to constantly reinvent how we produce it.